everyone, this is Self-Made Millennial. I'm Madeline Mann. Today, this video is going to be rapid fire of all the different ways you can respond to the question in an interview. So why did you leave your previous employer? I'll touch on why you voluntarily left, why you were laid off, and why you were fired. And I will give you example scripts of what to say. And please take elements of all the different scripts and put it together to create the best possible answer for your situation. First section, when you voluntarily leave a company. You may be leaving your previous role because it was Internet Explorer level awful. But know that positivity is key. Make sure to be optimistic, take ownership of the situation, and never blame others. I found that's often good to tailor your answer to the type of opportunity and company you're interviewing for. I never want you to lie, but I'll tell you how to put a positive spin on your answers. So if you're coming from a big company, interviewing at a small company, instead of saying, I'm bored, the work just isn't interesting, you could say, I want more ownership and be able to make a bigger impact in an organization. If you're coming from a small company and interviewing at a larger company, instead of saying, things are too chaotic and unclear at startups, you could say something like, I want to work in a more structured environment. I'd like the potential to have more resources to achieve big goals. If you're interviewing in a company that's in a different industry than the company you were at before, find something that intrigues you about that industry, such as if you worked in enterprise software and now you're interviewing at an advertising company, you could say something like, enterprise software is interesting, but I'm looking for an industry where I can be really passionate about it. And I recently took this online course on the psychology behind advertising, and I found it so fascinating, all the different moving parts that make advertising so influential. Now, in some cases, you're going for a role that's very similar. It's a similar role in the same industry, and the real reason why you're moving is because you don't like your manager or you like a salary bump at the next place you go to. Two different ways I would position this, and I maybe team them up, is first, talk about the product of the company that you're interviewing for. What interests you about it and what intrigues you? Additionally, you could talk about how you're looking for a company that is the right culture fit for you, and then point out something about that company's culture that you like. For example, my current job has great people. It's more of the organization as a whole is a bit more transactional and doesn't focus as much on fostering meaningful relationships. But based on your company's website and your blog posts, I can tell that you all have a lot of initiatives around building this inclusive culture, and that's really what stood out to me and made me feel like I could be a good fit here. Cool, so let's move on to the second section, which is being laid off, which is a total bummer, and I'm sorry that happened to you. The best thing to do here is explain the situation and try to focus your story as more of an organizational issue versus like a team or individual issue. Here's an example of how someone I interviewed answered this question. For the past 6 months, the company's been reorganizing due to the fact that revenues were down because new competitors had entered the space. They made several rounds of layoffs, and I made it through the first two, but ultimately in the third round of layoffs, my team was heavily impacted and I was laid off. When she responded this way, it showed she wasn't bitter, she was just stating the facts, and it really felt like it wasn't her fault. I'll usually follow up that answer by asking, okay, so how many people were on the team and then how many were let go? If 30 of the 40 people on the team were laid off, then you should indicate that because that shows that you were part of the large majority and you really had no control. If you were part of 5 out of 40 who were let go, that might give the perception that you were non-essential, and so I would leave those numbers off unless asked. Moving into section 3 of how to answer this question if you were fired. First of all, note that being fired is totally okay. I've had to fire tons of exceptional people in my career, and I've also been fired. And know that if you're fired, that doesn't mean you can't totally kick ass somewhere else. But if you are fired, really take it as a learning experience. Look within yourself, understand what happened, and make sure that you really target opportunities that are gonna be the best for you as your next job. My recommendation is to phrase being fired as something you agree with, that it was ultimately the best solution for all parties. An example of this is, I was hired for one role, but over time it started to evolve into something else that was outside my skill set. So it was an amicable split. And that's why I'm actually so interested in this opportunity, because it really hits on my strengths of XYZ. The important point to take away here is to never badmouth your previous employer ever. Make sure you take responsibility for the situation. No one wants to hire a victim. Let's say you had a horrible boss. It happens. It's okay to say what made it a tough relationship. He had an eruptive temper, and it was tough to get through conversations without him saying something damaging, and it wore on me. Then spin it in a positive and empathetic way. I totally understood where his anger was coming from. This was a crucial time, and there were a lot of high pressure situations. I learned how to be a better communicator and a calming force, but ultimately I feel that I would be best suited working with someone else. So those were some quick tips. Now let's review to go over the core things you need to remember when crafting your answer. First, don't place blame, take ownership of your situation. Second, come away with a learning. Even if that learning is more of a horrible warning of exactly the situation you don't want to be in the future, that's still learning. And third, positivity. Make sure you put a positive spin on your answer. That is all, folks. Thank you so much to those of you who are liking the video, who are commenting on it, who are sharing it to your networks. That means so much to me, and it's a huge help and lets me know, okay, you guys are digging these videos. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss these videos coming out every week, and I will see you next time.